the Bitcoin Group, the American original. For over the last 10 seconds, the sharpest Satoshis, the best Bitcoins, the hardest cryptocurrency talk. We'd like to welcome our panelists. Ben Ark from LN Bits.
Hello, Shamai. Good evening, everybody.
Dan Eve, the Crypto Raptor.
Happy Friday, happy high day.
Josh Shigala from the Standard.io.
Well, blow me down. It's another Friday.
Martine Wismare from General Bytes.
What's up?
And I'm Thomas Hunt from the World Crypto Network. Moving on to issue one. Issue one, Bitcoin's trajectory looks intact, but December's jump to 100K? Unlikely, say analysts. Currently, the price of Bitcoin is down 5%, 5.5% in the last 24 hours, with a last of 53,778. What has happened to the Bitcoin price? Martine Wismare asked before the show, and now we bring on Mad Bitcoins to give us the answer. What happened to the Bitcoin price?
Into the limo, you son of a bitch. No arguments.
Fuck, man, there's a beverage here.
Start talking and start talking fast, you lousy bum.
We've been frantically trying to reach you, Mad.
Where's my goddamn Bitcoin price, you bum?
Well, I don't know.
They did not receive the Bitcoin, you nitwit. They did not receive the goddamn Bitcoin. The price was in your hands.
That is our concern, Mad.
No, man. Nothing is fucked here. Nothing is fucked? The goddamn plane has crashed into the mountain.
Come on, man. Who are you gonna believe? Those guys? We dropped off the damn Bitcoin.
What?
The royal we, you know, the editorial. I dropped off the Bitcoin exactly as per... Look, I've got certain information. Certain things have come to light, and has it ever occurred to you, man, that given the nature of all this new shit, that instead of selling and losing our heads, maybe we should be buying and holding? Maybe we'll just end up with more Bitcoin in the long run, and this whole thing might not just be so, so simple,
What in God's holy name are you blathering about?
I'll tell you what I'm blathering about. I've got information. New shit has come to light, and shit, man, Bitcoin is really fucking cool in the long run. Well, look at it. Young digital currency. I mean, in the parlance of our times, owes Bitcoin all over town, including to known cryptographers, and that's cool. That's cool. But I'm saying the price needs buyers. And of course they're going to buy when you're sleeping because they want more, man. They've got to buy more Bitcoin. I mean, hasn't that ever occurred to you, sir?
No, Mr. Bitcoins, that had not occurred to me.
That had not occurred to us, Mad. Well, okay, you're not privy to all the new shit, so, that's what you pay me for. So speaking of which, would it be possible for me to get my 20 grand in Bitcoin? Because I've got to check with my accountant on this, but my concern is that, it could bump me up into a higher tax.
Brant, give him the envelope.
Well, okay, if you've already made out the paper wallet. We received it this morning.
Since you have failed to achieve, even in the modest task that was your charge, since you have reduced the price of Bitcoin, and since you have unrepentantly betrayed my cryptographic proof of work, I have no choice but to tell these bums that they should do whatever is necessary to recover their Bitcoin from you, Mad Bitcoins, and, with Brant as my witness, I shall tell you this. Any further harm visited upon Bitcoin shall be visited tenfold upon your wallet. By God, sir, I cannot abide another price drop.
You will not abide another price drop. Ben Ark, what happened to the price of Bitcoin, our beautiful, beautiful Bitcoin price?
I want to know what happened to Mad Bitcoins. I mean, I don't know what happened to that guy. He's seen him in ages. I hope he's okay. I hope he hasn't been wrench attacked. He's probably run off and sitting on some beach somewhere with all his fat stacks, because he had the one and only play, which is buy the Bitcoin, hold the Bitcoin, wait a while, goes up in value, sit on a beach, and then it just shows that all these people who people put stock in for advice on what Bitcoin's price is going to do can be wrong, and everyone thought it was going to go to 100k by the end of the year, including me and a lot of other people. So it's not, it's relatively low considering where it's supposed to be, unless it has a sudden surge. I don't think we're going to hit that 100k, but it doesn't really matter because it's, Bitcoin doesn't work to our human time scale. It works to its block times. So within a short period of time, it will hit 100k, of course. And then people can finally take those annoying laser eye pictures off their Twitter profiles, or change something else perhaps. But so it's just a matter of time. It'll get there with all the incredible work which is happening in Bitcoin at the moment, with the El Salvador stuff which has been happening over the past few months, all these real world use cases which is helping build Bitcoin and the Bitcoin infrastructure out, and all these solutions which are suddenly being used by big corporations, and they've got their eyes on Bitcoin, and all the great news of people finally, like the Bank of America, finally accepting Bitcoin as an important part of our future financial system. We'll get there, but not by the end of the year, sadly.
Ben says it doesn't matter, but what am I going to do with all these Plan B t-shirts, these Plan B hats, the Plan B scarves and neckerchiefs and caps? I've bought them all. Dan, Eve, the price of Bitcoin's going down. Does it matter?
No. And, what goes up must come down at some point. But just a kind of reminder that in 2017, so Bitcoin started December at 11K, peaked at 19.5K, and then finished at 14.2. So that's like it nearly doubled, right? So and if Bitcoin was to, and then in 2020 it started December in 18.8K, and it did double to 40.8K, and then ended at 29K. So it's not actually too unrealistic for it to pump and hit 100, right? It's still under 100% from here, like to hit 100K. So whilst it's not completely gone that prediction. Just a reminder about the analysts say thing. I just can't take it seriously anymore. It's akin to. For me, it's akin to like those articles that like say scientists baffled by, because some scientists are always baffled by something. Like for example, even analysts and scientists alike have said that electricity would never catch on, that internet wouldn't catch on, and they've been saying it for years that Bitcoin would never catch on, and it's here now. They said it, I'm sure they were saying it definitely at September 18th, 2014, which is when your Mad Bitcoins clip was, and the price was $424. So it's what, like 100 times that now? It's more than 100 times that price. So there's probably going to be people saying when it is over $100 that it's not going to catch on, and it won't reach 200K, but it will reach 200K eventually. But Bitcoin's a meme, right? And it's very it's powered by memes. It's got a very emotional sort of trading pattern to it, and people freak out and completely dump their Bitcoin when at the first sign of panic, and then the first sign of buying. The community kind of clubs together, and you have this laser eye stuff, and it memes Bitcoin's price into another level. So although it may not hit 100K like just in December, I think it's definitely going to hit it. And just want to go all the way back to 2001. Another reason why analysts say is a really silly thing. Richard Wiseman did an experiment where he had a child, an astrologer, and an expert, and they were predicting stocks. And Tia Laverne Roberts, the 4-year-old child, was only down £11. So this was just after the .com, just the .com sort of boom, and things were kind of on the decline. So Tia Laverne Roberts, the 4-year-old, was only down £11. The astrologer was down £294, and the expert was down £178. So the expert, the analyst, was the middle worst person. And so if you want to get information about whether Bitcoin's going to hit 100K, ask a 4-year-old.
I'd also like to ask everybody watching now to give us a thumbs up. There's about 14 people watching. If you all gave us thumbs up, that would confuse the YouTube algorithm. It would have no choice but to recommend us. Now, Josh, I'm looking at my script here. It says that there are triangles. It's the end of the year. Everyone's buying Christmas presents, but still we expect a whole bunch of buyers to come in and buy Bitcoin because this Plan B guy said we should put laser eyes on our profiles and that the triangles will work. Josh, it dipped out of the triangles. I made bigger, wider triangles. Can they make a triangle wide enough to solve our problem?
But the thing is about any sort of triangles or any TA, technical analysis, is not to determine that something will happen. The way you do technical analysis is to say that there's a probability of about a 1% deviation to the upside or the downside. And over time, you average out your losses, hopefully to the upside. And that's kind of how technical analysis works. You look over the history and you think, oh, you know, there's psychological barriers and ups and downs. But let's just take a moment to appreciate the Big Lebowski sketch at the start of this section. Fantastic stuff, super cool. I really miss those movie parodies that you used to do, Thomas. There was just wonderful stuff back in 2014. And you know, you putting that up there now really shows that us old schoolers have seen this constantly over and over and over again. And we talk about it in this show over and over again. Don't focus on the price, focus on building. If you're out there and you're keen on crypto, build something fun. Or if you're just in it for buying, then buy that dip. If you don't have any liquidity for the dip, then hodl. It's just a matter of time. You know, sometimes obviously you need to pay for things and life takes over, but don't stress. Things will head back up. What goes up must also come down a little bit when it overshoots, but it finds a price. Bitcoin is in a price discovery system, a mechanism, and gold has had 5,000 years of this, and Bitcoin has had, you know, since 2009. So it's one of these things. Just hold tight, you'll be right.
Martine, I'm involved in this new scheme. It says it's a triangle scheme. It sounds very safe. Are you interested in a triangle scheme?
Yeah, not really, because all those technical analysis people, they're all constantly drawing their triangles and stuff, and they never really work out. And then they go back and they adjust the little lines a bit, and then all of a sudden their prediction comes out. So I don't think this really works with Bitcoin. Bitcoin is not like driven by technical analysis, and as Dan pointed out, Bitcoin is more driven by sentiment, memes, and what other people think. You know, so I'm not too worried. I think it's partly due to the stock market crashing, or like, you know, going down because of the new Omicron variant or something, like, you know, I don't know, something happened, and then all of a sudden all the stock markets go down. And yes, people think the Bitcoin end is near, we're all doomed, but don't worry, just hodl. You don't have any loss until you cash out. So my advice would be just keep those wallets safe. Just don't look at the price for a month or so, and then you'll be pleasantly surprised. Price will go up again. I do think, you know, talking about the sketch you did, you showed earlier with the Big Lebowski, I think that guy just had like vodka and cream, or half and half, and he forgot the Kahlua in his drink. So the predictions came out, but there was something oddly wrong with the color of the White Russian. The White Russian cocktail should have a little bit of Kahlua in there as well. But other than that, it's a super episode.
I think it's a bad props guy. It was probably I think it was half and half in ice. Yeah, it's not very good. But we do have today the greatest prop of all time, the predictor of all predictors, the source of all knowledge and truth, the Bitcoin predictor ball. Ben, will the price of Bitcoin be higher or lower this time next week? Keeping in mind, you'll be, competing against the ball?
Higher.
Ben goes with higher. Dan, higher or lower?
I'm going to go lower because I know if I say lower, it will go higher.
Reverse psychology, Josh Segala, higher or lower?
Oh God, what are we? Yeah, higher. We're going higher, folks.
Martine Wismayer.
I'll agree with Josh on this one. Definitely higher.
And now the Bitcoin predictor ball. Will the price of Bitcoin be higher this time next week? As I see it, yes. As I see it, yes. The Bitcoin predictor ball has. Moving on to issue 2. Jack Dorsey retires from Twitter, and suddenly Square rebrands to Block in a nod to the blockchain. Yes, Square is rebranding just like Facebook rebranded to Meta and Google rebranded to Alphabet. The company has gotten so large that they now want a super name above all their other names. They have chosen the name Block. Block will tie together their units Square, the peer-to-peer cash app, and the music streaming service that no one uses called Tidal, as well as their Bitcoin-focused financial services segment that they spent a lot of time naming, which is called TBD 545666975. The name has many associated meanings for the company: building blocks, neighborhood blocks, and their local businesses, communities coming together at block parties full of music, a blockchain, a section of code, and obstacles to overcome. Dan, will Block, Square, Cash App, Tidal that no one uses, and Tidal that no one uses overcome their obstacles?
Well, it's definitely trying to come up with a hip name, because Square obviously is a bit of a square name, isn't it? Maybe he was trying to do a Kodak, right? You remember when early 2018, when Kodak were like, oh, we're renaming, we're doing blockchain, and we're going to rename to Kodak blockchain or something like that, and their shares pumped 70%. Oddly, Squares have gone down from 190 from when they announced it to like 180, but obviously the rest of the markets are kind of in a semi tank at the moment. Twitter never did announce that they were holding Bitcoin, which is quite interesting because, obviously Twitter was Jack's original company, and Square obviously bag holding Bitcoin, and Twitter aren't. The new CEO is quite a kind of woke character, right? From what I've read up. So maybe he's not too happy about, maybe he'll have a different opinion on Bitcoin because of, he's been swayed by these crazy environmental arguments that it's really bad for the environment and isn't good for kind of spurring on new renewables and encouraging, investment into the renewable sector where you get the cheapest electricity. So it's kind of it seems like a move that's following some of the other big names, like you said, like Google to Alphabet, Facebook to Meta, trying to stay hip with the times. I know that Twitter's share isn't kind of as big as Facebook, but so maybe they're kind of maybe I don't know why I brought up Twitter, but maybe he's just trying to kind of come up with something that's a bit more hip and that's going to make Block stand out compared to Square. And ultimately, he didn't actually mention that a block is like 6 squares, right, put together. So maybe that's got something to do with it. It's some sort of hidden meaning.
No, the hidden meaning isn't that hidden. It's Jack Dorsey's favorite function of Twitter.
What, blocking?
Yeah, absolutely. Just block, president, block.
Still sounds like fun. Josh Segala, your thoughts on the Meta company Block and its Alphabet?
Yeah,
Alphabet blocks.
I like it. I like that Jack's focusing on the blockchain and on crypto. I'm really the thing that he could do is just get on with it, implement the Lightning Network on Twitter. Like, how hard is this, people? Just get in touch with Ben Ark. He'll sort you out. Twitter and Lightning Network are like a match made in heaven. And in fact, Gmail could really nicely implement a nice Lightning Network plugin as well, that you have to attach some sats to an email to get through to me or something. That technology needs to start being innovative again, because all we're seeing is higher resolution, or hey, now you get a few more characters, or now you get Twitter. Now we're going to just steal the idea from like Clubhouse and put it into Twitter. Innovate a little bit. You love Bitcoin. You love what you're doing with Square. Just put the Lightning Network into Twitter already. What are you messing about for?
Of course, everyone knows that Twitter has innovated recently, launching a subscription service that gives you the ability to edit your tweet. Is that what people wanted, Josh? A subscription service where you still get to see those lovely ads that pretend to be tweets, which are the worst thing that ever happened to Twitter. But isn't it great you can subscribe to fix your typos?
Man, I so want to fix my typos. I'm like a dyslexic nightmare when it comes to Twitter. And it's like, I've like, why I can't, and then Jack Dorsey's coming, yeah, but you know, if you let people edit, then you can actually like, they start replying and not knowing what you've replied to in the thread mix. Every other chat app has fixed this issue by leaving a history. So you can see a little edited tag and you can click on it and you can see what someone wrote and how they changed it. It's not difficult, Jackie boy.
Only subscribers can fix their typos.
This is how Netflix, I go for job interviews.
Netflix, Apple Plus, Google Blue, Twitter Blue, fix those typos. That's what I want. Martine Wishmayer. Go ahead, Josh. What?
And by the way, Jack, no offense. This is how I always go into job interviews, just totally offend the guy.
I'm sure he's at home wearing sandals and watching the Bitcoin group. Martine, your thoughts on the Jack Dorsey Square tidal wave of cash?
I always wondered how somebody can run so many companies. So in a way, I think it's good to see that he hands over control of Twitter to somebody else. It remains to be seen how Twitter will become more successful or at least profit making. The whole rebrand thing to block, I mean, this is so ICO times, blockchain, not Bitcoin. I mean, it's just silly. I like Square as a name. It's not great, but it grew on me. Of course, Square Service is not available in your country if you look in the App Store here in Europe. So I can't judge on the Square app. I do try this title thing. I think it's utterly trash. Why do they even keep trying that? I mean, Spotify, just took all of it. There's no room for a second one. Yes, there might be if there is some innovation, but this whole title thing, just like I maybe logged in once or twice and then I gave up. Yeah, I hope they do build out some nice blockchain applications or Bitcoin. Just skip the shit coins. It will save you a lot of time. But the one of the things I recently read was that they had a white paper. I thought, wow, this is so 2017. We're having a white paper again for a decentralized exchange. So that might be cool if they're building something like that. So I think he wants to focus on a little bit more instead of being all over the place with all these different companies. So it does make sense for him to quit Twitter, because I don't know, Twitter, as Josh pointed out, his subscription service was just useless. It was not worth the money. And Twitter hasn't, for as far as I can see, hasn't really gained momentum in making any money. It's nice. It's popular. I use it at least 10 times a day. I open my Twitter client, but I'm using a third-party client. I'm not even using the Twitter client because it's just no good, and it's not very productive. So I don't know. It's good. Jack moved on. I do hope if it's not going to be one of those woke companies like Dan pointed out, that they will say, oh, no more Bitcoin because the environment. But what's that? What's that, Josh? Josh, you adjusting your camera? Oh, sorry about that. Sorry, I totally. Rename it to whatever you want it to be, but don't focus too much on the name. Focus on the product. It makes no sense to keep rebranding yourself. Like Facebook moved to Meta. Who cares? It's still Mark Zuckerberg, and we don't like Facebook. So, it's changing the name won't change anything about the company, in my opinion.
Yeah, and by the way, can we stop calling the internet the metaverse like for the last 3 weeks?
Yeah, that's total bullshit, I think. Yeah. Oh, sorry, nonsense.
I find it really amazing how people just repeat stuff. A big company can just start to say the metaverse, and you're like, and then all of a sudden, every single mouthpiece on earth starts saying the metaverse, the meta. It's cyberspace. It's always been cyberspace or the internet. Why is cyberspace now the metaverse? Is it because Facebook decided to brand the entire internet?
Yeah, and there is.
We're there right now. We're in the metaverse, but they're gonna do it all over again. There's already people talking about Second Life and how people have completely forgotten Second Life, and that we're just gonna do that again. There was this 3D environment called Second Life, and you could make anything you want. And just today, I read an article that said that Seoul, South Korea, is going to be the world's first metaverse city, because get ready for this. And I know there's going to be a special tinge of libertarian excitement out there as I tell you about the joys that you'll receive if you put on your VR goggles and go to Seoul. They've recreated City Hall, and now you can pay your driver's license bill and pay your tax forms and file papers virtually in a metaverse, and it'll be just like filing papers in person,
including the waiting lines and stuff.
It's all there. We've recreated the entire experience for you. Yes, and it's like no one wants this. Like we have a little queue on the computer right now on a web page or it's practically text. Like it could be text if we needed it to be, but yes, the metaverse. It's a beautiful scam. They're gonna raise so much beautiful money on this. Remember, just a few years ago, we said that, well, if your company needs a database, but you would rather, as an IT person, have 10 times the revenue, you could say a blockchain database, right? Now you're like, we need a web page that has some extra plugins for VR. Is what we're really saying. Like maybe we could use some VR cool stuff on our web page. We need a metaverse. We need to build you a metaverse, and it's going to cost you 100 times what we were going to charge you before.
We need VRML. That's what we need.
I remember that. That was like, oh, yeah.
Click like if you remember VRML. It was the VR version of HTML.
It also sounds like we're going to recreate the Twitter API here. Remember when Twitter was an open platform and anyone could make a third-party client, and the whole thing was like all open and free? It sounds like we're imagining that Jack will just do that again, but this time with a decentralized exchange. And he'll never do that trick again where he closes it up at the end and cuts off all the APIs and all the companies. But no, I have some notes here for Martine. It says that companies should go ahead and get ahead of the curve and change their name to "This app is not available in your country." Solid name, just right there. Boom. And I kind of disagree on the Twitter momentum. I'm not so sure about Jack's decision to leave Twitter and stick with the Square title Cash App disaster company, because that company just seems like Strike. It seems like they're going to buy Strike. They're going to merge with Strike. Then they have the Lightning Network. Then they don't need any of these payment rails that they've been wasting their time building. And they're just like PayPal. Again, the only question here is, does PayPal buy Strike before Cash App and Twitter? Ooh, there's a little drama for you. But no, on the other side, I see Twitter perfectly copying Clubhouse, crushing Clubhouse, wrecking their dreams in a Microsoftian, Apple-esque way against a third-party app, just wrecking them and moving forward to this idea where Twitter has images, Twitter has video, Twitter has audio chat, Twitter has voice chat. Twitter is this uber social network if they could just get out of their own way. If the subscription service didn't offer me the typo thing, which yes, we all said we wanted the typo thing, but we want it for everybody. I don't want this like only the hoity-toity get to fix their grammar errors. This is not what we were asking for, Jack. We were like, typos put us in a special category. No. Fix the typos for everybody and give us no more fake tweets. You don't even have ads. You have fake tweets. You design them so they look like tweets. You put them in the profile. So you trick me into reading them. You're tricking me into reading ads. I'll pay $10 a month to stop. Cultivate the people who like Twitter. Encourage them to use Twitter more. Like, let them get paid for doing the streams. Let them get paid for having clicks and videos and these things. Maybe have some real ads instead of fake tweets. But no, I think Twitter is more interesting. As far as the little thing Dan brought up about the whole right-wing fear, it seems like that Twitter put out some language that basically says no more ex-girlfriend porn, and like we're gonna shut that off. And all the right-wingers are like, they're going after our journalist. And they mean that guy that does all the fake exposés. Like, you could look it up, Project Veritas or something. He's like, he does all these fake exposés and they're going to stop him. It's like, well, maybe we should get some real journalists, do some real exposés. But no, I think it's just about the ex-girlfriend porn. I don't think they're going to crack down on Twitter. Twitter crackdown. That's just like when you go into something and you have a preconceived conclusion and you want to believe it, you just start collecting evidence that supports your conclusion. So.
Yeah, but Twitter is too big. That's the problem. No matter which side of the political aisle you're on, you don't want one big mouthpiece controlling information like that. It's really, really, really very dangerous. You don't want it. You don't want it. Even if they're fully for your side of the political spectrum, you don't want that, because you end up in an echo chamber, and B, it gets extremely dangerous.
Well, I remember when this service was called Finger, and you would be on Unix and you would type Finger John Carmack, and it would come up with John Carmack's Finger file, which was a text file, .finger or something that he could edit with his Nano or Pico or Emacs text editor right there. And John Carmack would say, working on a new game today, and you could finger him. And that was all Unix and all open, and everyone had their own servers. And that's, again, probably where we should have stayed. But
the name is really a bit odd.
Yeah, stop fingering the
yeah, just odd. Sounds odd.
Always become
amazing
and such. But yes, it was called Finger. You can look it up. And again, we decided that the internet companies should be built by advertising, by money, and by whoever could do it the fastest and the cheapest, generally with the least ethics. But that's generally comes into mind when I say fast and cheap. Fast and cheap and dirty. We got this guy Zuckerberg. He's been stalking all the women on campus. He's got a leg up on the competition because he understands everyone wants to do what he's doing in that service, and he builds it up. He gets more and more people until he's like this big black hole sucking in all of our information and using it for about the worst things you could imagine he could use our information for. But again, we didn't want to go with the Unix guys. We didn't want to go with the open source guys because they take longer. We didn't want to give them more money because they're a bunch of communists, right? You don't want to just give them money for making this free and open internet. That's fucking communism. Like, we had to go with the advertising people, and they built us the worst possible tools. We wanted to share our photos, and they said, internet surveillance? We said, share photos with family and friends? He said, internet surveillance. And now they're going to get into VR and the metaverse. Everything's going to be fine, though. Ben, Ark, your thoughts on whatever the topic was?
Yeah, on Twitter. And Jack Dorsey wasn't leaving Twitter and block and all that sort of stuff. You bring up very good points. I think if everyone's relying on Jack Dorsey to keep Twitter free from censorship or whatever else, and then they jack him if somebody gets banned from Twitter, it's a private corporation operating in jurisdictions where they get leaned on and they have to comply to rules, which is why it may be going more quote unquote woke, just in order to continue to operate. And if you don't want that, then that shouldn't be owned by a private corporation. It should be a public commons, some sort of public utility. And we have all these crazy decentralized tools for building such things and building decentralized social networking platforms. It's just a case of building them. Jack Dorsey, they did have the Blue Sky initiative, which seemed, from what I could tell, to be a complete flop after 2 years. They just released a paper which basically compared things like Mastodon and Scuttlebutt and other solutions, and didn't really propose anything. We work a lot on this thing called, well, we don't work a lot on this thing called Nostar, but we there's a protocol, notes and other stuff relays. which I fiddled around with, and it's extremely exciting. And you can replicate a Twitter in a way which is censorship resistant, and it's not decentralized, but it's decentralized enough in order for it not to be censored in the way which a lot of people disagree with. And that's, I think, a public platform like a Facebook or a Twitter. It shouldn't be owned by some big corporation operating in one particular jurisdiction predominantly. It should be free and open source commons, which everyone can access in some sort of decentralized way. Maybe Jack will do that now. Maybe he'll compete with the thing which he created. But I also think that's maybe why he wants to step away from it. And it's become boring for him. He knows that there's only one direction it can head in if it wants to continue to operate on the scale in which it's operating, and that is just to comply and just not piss off government and give them an excuse to block or ban them. So we have to find alternatives. I can see why he changed the name. I'm happy that Jack Dorsey's left Twitter. I think he's a good guy. He's a good developer. And if you look at Twitter, actually, it didn't change that much because it was a solid product from the beginning. It works, and it worked well. If you look at Facebook and how much that changed, that wasn't a solid product to begin with. The only reason Facebook ever took off, by the way, was it had that crazy algorithm thing when you signed up to it. So it would, without you knowing, it would email everybody in your inbox saying, Ben is now on Facebook. Do you please join him? Here's a link to join Facebook. And it just like propagated like a virus. It's very black hat bit of software, which you totally wouldn't be allowed to do now. That's the only reason Facebook managed to get like any sort of traction. Software it was pretty poor, to be fair. But no, it's good that Jack Dorsey has left Twitter, and I can see why he changed the name of Square to Block. Kind of wants a fresh start, and he always said that if he wasn't working on Twitter, he'd be working on Bitcoin full time, which is great. We want him in Bitcoin land, and if Square becomes more Bitcoin centric, then fantastic. I think the best thing which Jack Dorsey could probably do is just incubate and nurture all these great free and open source projects out there, which he was doing with the Lightning Thingamy-Bob Fund. But I'm not sure how many projects have actually been funded through it and how much work they've actually done. But I mean, just taking some of that money which he's made in that private sector and then pouring it into the open source world of and helping bolster Bitcoin with good free and open source solutions is probably the right play. Hopefully he'll try and do that through this block thing in some way. But yeah, it's good luck to him. Fresh start, wants a clean slate, new name. When you hear block, you think of blockchain. It all feels a bit, here we go. But you just needed to name it something. You can imagine him in that Silicon Valley, or Austin, Texas, meeting with all of his investors, and he's like, I know this is in the Square, but he's like, this is a Square, this is a block. We're going to change the name to Block, and then we'll go, yeah, fuck yeah. Good luck to him. I hope he works on Bitcoin and brings Bitcoin into Block and makes some useful products for people. And Twitter is going to go more and more woke, and it's going to have less and less free speech and more censorship, all that stuff. Explore some of the free and open source platforms that exist out there. Look at Nostar, go to nostar.com. I knocked up like a kind of Twitter reclone thing in like a month, and it needs like a little bit more work, and it would actually be quite a good kind of Twittery type solution. So contributors very welcome.
So Ben, with Nostar, do you have any plans in future to support fingering?
I'm not sure. We did try fingering each other, but oh god, it's smelly.
So if you're watching at home, please in the comments, if you could comment on who you would most like to finger out of the panelists today, if fingering was supported.
Yeah, hit that.
It seems like you've named your project Nostril, so you're going to be fingering your nostril. I'm not sure.
Well, Nostar improvement
Facebook
proposals.
had poke, right?
Hmm?
Facebook had poke, so that wasn't much better.
We got nips.
Very famous
in Nostar. If you want to make it, because you have instead of Bitcoin improvement proposals, we've got Nostar improvement proposals, which are nips, and I think that was kind of lost in translation. So it's all nips.
Yeah, that's a bit racist.
It's horrible on so many levels.
No, nipples, not nips. I don't know. Is that racist as well? Is it?
You can't talk about the Nippons.
Nippons.
I don't know what a Nippon is.
Well, we're going back to World War II here, but I got to get us back on track. It says here in the notes, this is a question for the audience at home. You can play along in the chat. This is interactive. you be Jack Dorsey, which company would you stick around and run? Would you run Twitter with all of its problems and the goal to get rid of the Nazis? Or would you run Square, Block, Tidal Wave, Cash App, and its goal to be a lot more like Strike in the future? Dan, Eve, which would you run?
It's got to be Block/Square. Get on the Bitcoin wagon and push the open source.
Josh Shigala.
Oh, it'd be Twitter. I'd take that beast and I'd chuck Nostar on it.
Yeah.
The thing is, it's such an amazing tool and it's such a powerful tool, but it's got to be let free, and you got to figure out a way to deal with people, censorship, because censorship is needed. Like, you don't want pictures.
No. What's great about Nostar is you actually sort of self-censor in a way. So depending on what relays you connect to, depends on what content you're going to get. So me personally, I want quite a vanilla kind of Twitter experience. So I'm going to connect to kind of the vanilla relays, which cut out all the, the racist or whatever else, all the like horrible pictures and whatever else. They'll censor that, and I don't mind that. Like, I'll connect to those relays. However, if you're into something else, then you can connect to other relays, and the relays are so inconsequential that if they get taken down, you can just spin them up somewhere else, and people can just reconnect to different relays for different interests. It's very fascinating, because you almost just self-censor and create the experience which you want to create. That's great, because it is a really big problem in wider internet. I definitely don't. I would never want to be one of the censorers at YouTube or something like that, because the horrific stuff that they have to put up with and see is atrocious. But so, life is all about trying to find out, hey, you've got total sickos in the world that are ready to put that in your face, so you have nightmares for the rest of your time. And how do you, or even worse, if a child sees it, it is terrible, right? So you do need a form of censorship, but it's really important to allow expressions of all sorts of opinions as well. And this is the fine line that humanity constantly has to walk.
Martine, which would you run, Block or Twitter?
Definitely Twitter, and work on decentralizing it. I think the Twitter has the users, so we've seen over the years that if somebody creates a better system and then users are not there, it's extremely difficult to get the users there. Just take a look at the WhatsApp backlash. When they changed their user agreement, everybody was saying, move to Telegram, move to Signal. And I did that, and I basically removed everyone that remained on WhatsApp, but I had to find new friends. And doing that again with Twitter is just like, I will have 0 friends left, because they're all on Twitter. So Twitter has to improve. So if I definitely go for Twitter and work on decentralizing it, or a semi-decentralized way. Maybe the Nostr thing is very good, but it should be integrated with the Twitter user base. That way it can grow from there, and then it will be successful. But as Josh pointed out, there has to be some sort of filtering mechanism, because otherwise you get all the wackos, posting all the stuff, and we also have a sort of social responsibility, but one man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter. So it's really difficult to put that responsibility in one place.
This is why I like it, because you're not relying upon a central corporation to take those decisions for you. You're making those decisions for yourself. And
sounds like Ben is building an internet of servers, perhaps
this metaverse thing as well. Like, so I was at some Bitcoin conference. I heard people say, well, not Bitcoin, a less Bitcoin conference, more of a shitcoin conference, and people kept mentioning this metaverse thing. And eventually, I had to complain. I was like, I'll be honest, I don't know what this metaverse is. What is it? And then they explained it to me, and it took me ages to think about it. And I was like, the internet? You're talking about the internet, yeah? That thing? Oh yeah. Okay, I understand now.
And now, Ben, which would you run, Block or Twitter?
I would quit them both. I would work on Nostar. I would fund development. the Nostar Telegram group is a bunch of us Bitcoin developers going, oh man, I wish we were working on Nostar. We should do more work on Nostar, but we're too busy doing Bitcoin stuff. So come on, Jack. You had your blue sky thing, like chuck some sats at Nostar, make some bounties, get some cool software built, please.
Got some updates from the chat. Christian says that he would run Twitter, but it seems like he's only running it to sell it, get a majority stake in a low cap crypto gem because kings, right? And Jacob on the other side says block. He wants to run block. I think I would join Josh and Martine in running Twitter. As they said in Citizen Kane, I think it would be fun to run a newspaper. Moving on to issue 3, WCN Clips. Check out the WCN Clips YouTube channel on YouTube. Just search for WCN Clips. We've got all the clips from this show and more at WCN Clips. Subscribe today, says my email alarm. Charlie Munger says he admires China for banning crypto. And this was the best picture that we could find of Charlie Munger. Charlie Munger, vice chairman of Berkshire Hathaway, says that China made the right decision in banning cryptocurrencies. The 97-year-old gave his thoughts on the impact cryptocurrency has had on the financial markets, saying, the dot-com boom was crazier on the valuations either than we have now. But overall, I consider this era even crazier than the dot-com era. I don't welcome a currency that's so useful to kidnappers and extortionists and so forth. It doesn't seem like he was asked about the US dollar or about the so-called FANG, Facebook, Apple, Netflix, and Google stocks that have dominated stock investing for the last 20 years, all of which came out of the dot-com stock boom. Josh Shigala, is Munger right? Is China correct to ban Bitcoin mining?
Oh, of course. What? Oh man, like these really old dudes. It's sort of awful to see that they really can't grasp what's happened, how amazing the concept of a rare digital asset is. No matter what you say, you can't ban math, dude. Like, China has banned it, but it's still happening. Vast amounts of Chinese people are still trading in crypto. They're gaming, they're sending NFTs, they're doing stuff. You're foolish to think all you've done by making something illegal is made a whole lot of criminals that didn't exist before. Because before they weren't criminals and now they are. For what? Doing what? Moving some math around. And so it's really, really sad to see people using the violence of the state because of their strange little, no, I think they should ban that thing that I totally don't understand, and really make criminals out of millions of people. What a ridiculous notion, and it's sad to see someone so close to their deathbed. And I don't hope that he dies, but once you're that age, you are closer than your, birth bed, that's for sure. So, when you're close to that, you'd hope that you'd have some sort of philosophical hindsight to look at what sort of comments you put out in the market and what sort of destructive crap you can dribble.
Martine Wishmayer, your thoughts on Charlie Munger?
Hello. Yeah, Jurassic Park just called. I want a dinosaur back. No, serious. This is total nonsense. Going on to stating that China made the right decision to ban. So what does that mean? He wants like Chinese style bans in the free world? And no way. I mean, this person, one, didn't get it. Two, thinks that banning something China style is good for anything, and really back again to didn't get it. I mean, really, it's used by terrorists, and at least it's not used to fund wars like some of the other fiat currencies have been used for. So no, it made no sense. I think the author of the article should really be ashamed of themselves that they published something like this. And so we're almost in 2022. I mean, this is so 2012 style reporting. So, I mean, no, articles like this, usually I skip them, but, Thomas gives us homework that we have to read in on all the topics. So I was reading it, but I couldn't help to feel like aggravated and angry. I was like, so no. I think I'll just let Jurassic Park know that I can come and collect the dinosaur, because
you know what's sad is that when Jamie Dimon says Bitcoin's a scam, anyone that uses it is going to be fired and blah blah blah, I know that he's actually stacking right in that moment and using his voice to crash the market to pick up. Like he's an astute guy, and now obviously they're all into it, and JP Morgan's fine with it, and but when I see Munger talking about it, what's sad is I know that he actually believes what he's saying, because it's not like, hey grandpa, can you quickly just shit all over Bitcoin in the media so I can stack some sats? Like, no, he's not doing that. He's literally doesn't understand any of this, and then says such sort of harsh things, and yeah, it's horrible.
And so much for the theory that Munger was just saying it to piss Martin off. Ben Ark, your thoughts on Munger and his in favor, like Martin says, in favor of Chinese-style economic controls, including sudden entire bans of entire industries. Incredible, like these capitalists, yes?
I mean, he's made his money by being a state stooge, isn't he? He's a state capitalist. Like, he wants control. His power and control is via his connections through states. So of course he hates this decentralized technology. I mean, Charlie Munger once said that buying Bitcoin was similar to harvesting baby brains. Now, that's one of the evilest concepts I've ever heard. And like when I heard it, I was like, fuck, dude, I'm sorry swearing, but that's horrible. What a horrible concept. And the brain which would use a concept like that is not a healthy brain. It's a dark brain, and he should just be ignored in everything he says. Particularly at his age, he's supposed to kind of mellow out, be this nice old granddad dude, and he's saying shit like that, like harvesting baby brains. I mean, clearly that's very extreme when you describing like a decentralized, open, permissionless value transfer protocol, but absolutely incredible. And to obviously that old claim that Bitcoin's used by terrorists and drug dealers. We all know that the USD is the most heavily used technology by terrorists and drug dealers, the petrodollar. So no, he's just a state stooge, and he's just doing his part to try and claw onto some power in his evil satanic lizard cabal. Screw that guy.
It's interesting and amazing how far we've come. In 1729, Jonathan Swift published his essay, A Modest Proposal, or as the full title says, A Modest Proposal for Preventing the Children of Poor People from Being a Burden to Their Parents or Country, and for Making Them Beneficial for the Public, in which he suggested that the poor might raise their children so that the rich could eat them. Now, he was being satirical, but even he didn't have what Ben had, which is this new idea of harvesting just the brains. And then it becomes, how do you make the brains bigger and fatter rather than making the general child fatter? But whereas Munger is using it as propaganda and misinformation to attack something that he hates, this Bitcoin, and he's thinking of the worst possible things, like cigarette smoking times 1,000. He's really grinding it in there with the harvesting of babies' brains. But yes, in just a few hundred years, we've gone from this being satire to being taken seriously. And even after Munger said these crazy things, they still go back and interview him, because if you're a reporter, you have a very small Rolodex, and it's usually like Chris Christie. And then you're like Charlie Munger, JP Morgan guy, whatever his name was. Yeah, and Buffett, all these people, they're the only people that know anything about finance, even though they've been wrong about Bitcoin for like 10 years now. You could add some new people in there, especially after they say horrifying things about eating babies' brains. But that's just my idea. It's too much work. You have to get out new pages of that Rolodex. You have to white out the old pages. It's a disaster. Dan Eve, Munger is editing his Rolodex now. He's not going to call us back. Was he right? Is China right to ban Bitcoin?
I hate to go ad hominem, but he does look, especially in that picture, he looks like a turtle having a lap dance, like a really seedy, perverted turtle having a lap dance. And you know, and again, no one wants to pick on age specifically, but sometimes technology like just doesn't click, you know, with certain, you know, with certain demographics and technology. You know, I think even Warren Buffett said that, you know, he tries to stay away from kind of tech stocks and stuff. So, you know, they're of the same ilk. They're obviously the chairman and co-chairman of Berkshire Hathaway. They stick away from tech stocks, which are, you know, ironically, 4 tech stocks became the 4 first $1 trillion companies. So big loss there if they've invested. The fact that the dot-com boom, you know, he uses that as a comparison, but like it's the worst comparison ever because the dot-com boom, it did bust a bit, but it was a bubble, but it's now booming, right? Like it's, you know, e-commerce has completely changed the world. So it's just a really odd like example to use to say to talk about the, you know, something that's not going to be ultimately successful, because you know, e-commerce just completely changed the world. It gave birth to the trillion. Well, I say give birth to the, you know, it helped some of the, you know, 2 of the $1 trillion companies become so big, Amazon and Amazon and Alphabet. Obviously, you know, you got things like Facebook, you know, all the big other Silicon Valley type companies, all online businesses that are absolutely insane in terms of valuation. So there's some big losses there, I think, on the balance sheet that they're probably investors are shitting on them about, saying, "Hey, man, I could have bought Amazon and I could have bought, you know, but you told me that Betamax was better or whatever." You know, it really doesn't work out like for some people, because they hate Bitcoin. They're not willing to learn about it. They're not willing to learn about the reasons why it's better than fiat money. And to use the old, like, you know, oh, it's used for criminals, and, you know, I can't support a currency that can be used in criminal situations. You know, that old chestnut. The fact that the dollar, as if the dollar's not used and any other currency is not used in criminal situations, but saying specifically kidnapping and extortions. Like, I'd like to know what the true amount of, say, the volume, you take the volume from start to finish, or start to now of Bitcoin, and what percentage of that trading volume or the market cap, whichever one, has actually been, you know, used in extorting or kidnapping. It's an absolute micro fraction. So to use that as an excuse and say that's all bad, and that China is good for banning Bitcoin, you know, it's just a very odd thing to say, I think, and it just kind of shows how out of touch he is with reality, just like the other people that predicted Bitcoin's death and have been singing its obituary for a long while.
It's also worth noting that several of the early ideas in the .coms that people like to make fun of have actually come back now, using the exact same idea. Pets.com, order your dog food online, is Chewy.com, or you can do it through Amazon. WebVam, get your groceries delivered, is now called Instacart or Amazon Fresh or other services. I think there was something called Kayak or something that would bring me, bicycle messengers would bring me videotapes and ice cream. Now that's called Postmates and DoorDash and all these other services. So I don't really see the idea about the .coms being such a bad thing. Now, sure, it didn't mean that Pets.com would take over the market because they owned Pets.com. That was a bit of a mistake there, but a good team with a good product and a good direction that didn't spend all the money on Super Bowl ads probably could have taken over any of those industries, as we saw with Amazon, as we saw with Netflix. A good team, the right amount of money, not wasting it all on Super Bowl ads. You could take over the world. Moving on to issue 4. Good Doge. Crypto has gone to the cats and the dogs, and people naming their dogs Bitcoin and Elon. Yes, according to Rover.com's 2021 most popular pet names and trends of the years, pet owners are naming their dogs Doge and their cats Bitcoin. Elon and Jeff Bezos are particularly popular names. It's been a big year for Doge coins. Dogs named Doge were up 106% this year. Canines named Amazon jumped 363%. Dogs named Siri up 131%. And pups named Google were up 63% on the year. Let's see. There's also, it says, the top female names for 2021 are Bella, Luna, Lucy, Daisy, and Zoe, while the top male dog names were Max, Charlie, Cooper, Buddy, and Milo. Hooray for Milo. Let's go to Ben Ark. What about people are naming their dogs Doge and their cats Bitcoin?
It's I think it's my new favorite indicator. You can trade the dog names, and you think of all the impressions when you're in the park and someone's just going Bitcoin, 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 and someone else on the other side of the park, Doge, Doge, come back. No, I like it a lot. Obviously, a lot of this world is because we see a lot of power in the technology, inherent power, to the people, and we're very excited about it. So there's a cultural phenomenon which is attached to something like Bitcoin, which I imagine eventually will become, will end, because it will be the backbone of just all society and just something we use, like email, for example. But currently, while we have this cultural phenomenon, it's a lot of fun. Sometimes it can be annoying when people try and like box it in with a kind of a no true Scotsman, this is a Bitcoiner type thing, or this is a Dogecoiner, but whatever. But part of that cultural phenomenon is people, wanting to call their I wonder back in the day if people were, calling their like dogs SMTP or something. We try an SMTP in the park. There's probably some dogs out there called SMTP. But yeah, it's just another side effect of this cultural phenomenon, and it's all about the impressions. So the more people screaming after their dogs on the beach when they call Bitcoin, the better.
The dogs are all called Fetch, FTP, Finger, and Go-To. Dan, Eve, your thoughts on these new dog names? And none of them seem to be Bcash or BSV. These don't seem to be popular names for dogs. As Ben said, no true Bitcoiner would own a dog named Litecoin.
Well, you see, I'm trying to beckon him over, but he's. I think my dog's got one of the best names, which is here, buddy. Here's, up here. Here he comes. It's Dave Growl, named after Dave Grohl from the Foo Fighters. Here you go. He's a sausage dog. So I think that's one of the better names. Hey, Dave Growl. He's very annoyed though, because he thought I had the ball, and unfortunately, I don't. Here we go. Right again. Some of those names are pretty. I think that I love the Siri and the Google. So kind of troll like the trolling sort of element. You can imagine people going through the park and then suddenly someone says, "Oh, Siri," and then everyone's watches go off and things start getting ordered and all sorts. Like, Siri, fetch me a so and so, and then it's like, okay, ordering you a so and so, and that sort of thing. So I think that's cool. Some of the crazy ones were like, Pfizer. So the Pfizer turned up on the dog naming list, and Fauci. Like, stop biting my ankles, you little shit, Fauci. And the other thing was my other dog is I've got two dogs. One's Dave Growl, and the other one is Izzy Rascal. And Izzy's a female though. But I like the kind of the quirky dog naming. And there's something about naming dogs like human names that I think is kind of quite cute as well. Because people, when I go taking Dave for a walk, there's always someone bound to turn around, and I'm going, Dave, and then someone looks around, and you're like, no, it's the dog. And some people get offended, so that's just one of the perils of life, being called Dave and such a popular name. But I think it's definitely. I haven't heard any of these Shibas yet, or these Kishus, or these Doges yet. But Doge is quite a cool name, so I think I'd like Doge. And they said Bitcoin for cats as well. That's quite an interesting one. But cats aren't they're not as kind of, you don't take your cat walking through the park, so you probably won't hear it as much. But what it is good for is people shouting it outside their home, like waiting for the cat to come in, like, Bitcoin, come back. And people are like thinking, oh, Bitcoin's going to pump again. Maybe they're saying, prawn, Bitcoin price, come back. But so I'm all for crazy dog naming, that's for sure.
Obviously, the only people who are offended are the people who have dogs' names. Joshua Shigala.
Bring on wacky dogs' names. Yeah, for sure. I don't know what to say. What I want to know is, how do they actually get this data? Like, I mean, someone that calls their dog Buddy, I don't see them going and registering that name anywhere. And like, I can understand human names because there's like an actual registry, but dog
Chipping?
names, I don't
Maybe
know.
chipping.
Hey,
Yeah, the chips.
Maybe
You have to register your dog. At least here in Portugal, you have to get chipped, and then it's registered with the name and the serial number of the chip. So this way they know all the names and all the numbers.
all right.
All
Got
the
you.
data was provided by a private donor named Zark Muckerberg. Zark Muckerberg.
Oh, really? Not Mark Zuckerberg.
Sounds like a trustworthy source.
Yeah. That's all I have to say about that.
All right, Martine, what do you think about the Doge names?
I think it's hilarious. You know, our dog is called Kira because that's the name she already had, but she doesn't really listen to that. So might as well call her Fauci or Bitcoin. Yeah. Or Siri. I think Siri was the best one. You know, it's like Siri. Yeah. Yeah. That's cool. It's a sign of the times. I think there's like fashionable names, and this happens with humans, and it definitely happens with pets, but because they're pets, it doesn't really matter. So you get the most outrageous names. So yeah, Fauci is fun too. Fauci, bad Fauci. Yeah, that's yeah. It's a nice article to read. I always thought Thomas had such an original dog name for his dog Milo, and then it turned out to be in the top 5. So no, I expected more originality from the show host, to be honest.
Next year, we're going to be number 1. Number 1, going to the top. No, I think that Siri is one of the worst names. It's like those answering machine messages where they start talking to you. And I think I hardly even want to say it, but I think Alexa would be the worst. So many people have those A-word devices in your home. If you want to talk about it, you just start saying A-word because it doesn't turn on.
I know somebody who's it's a client of us, and his daughter is called Alexa, and he had Alexa at home, and she was like, 5 years old or 6 years old, but he had to like change the wake up word on the Alexa. You can do that with Google, or sorry, with Amazon, with Alexa. You can't do that with Google because she was showing her girlfriends that she had superpowers and could turn on and off the lights. And then he thought, like, this is really going in the wrong direction. I have to change the wake word. So
would that work now? Can we say like, Alexa, play Cradle of Filth? Siri, play Cradle of Filth?
Alexa, add chocolate salty balls to my shopping list. Just like in South Park.
It's nice. Amazon lets you change it to the word computer. Which you think would be fun because it's all Star Trek, but then you realize how long it is every time you want to say computer this. But it reminds me of that classic XKCD comic strip where they name the young gentleman Bobby Drop Tables, close parentheses, semicolon. And everywhere he goes, he destroys databases. And it's a beautiful name.
I don't know why these big services haven't allowed you to customize this stuff more than they have.
Well, it's annoying, I think, because you have to actually say, "Hey Google," every single time, and Google is just too much of a long word. That's why I think Siri is better. But what I found a while back is that Google allows for continuous conversations if you switch it on. So you don't have to keep, "Hey Google, hey Google, hey Google," all the time. On mine is responding now. But you can just say that once and just start a conversation, which I think is better. And they're gradually removing that hot word that for certain actions that you don't even have to use that anymore, which I find a little bit scary because that means it's listening in all the time.
I was going to say, I'm surprised you've got one of those things, Martin.
I've got them everywhere. The only place I haven't.
Device.
Oh yeah, but it's surveillance or privacy. I think it's a balance, convenience. Light switches are so 1990s, and I'm just not going to do that anymore. I'm not going to.
This is the back door, though. Eventually, you just give in, and you're like, imagine the Martin from like 15 years ago. He kicked your ass for having Google.
Yeah. I would have. 15 years ago, I was still getting out of my bed to turn off the lights at night, and I was actually. There was a lot of. It was hard life back in the 90s.
Can you imagine?
Yes, it just wasn't what I'm not going back there. No,
but it really sucks because we bought a new speaker. It was a beautiful speaker, but it has to have some silly microphone in it, and it has to talk to Google. And since it's there, I'm like, I keep looking at it, thinking, listening. And this was in 1984. One of the things that George Orwell stated in that book was you had the video screens on all the time. You knew that they weren't watching all the time, but you never knew that maybe at that moment they were watching you. Oh, and this is the sort of I just had this
like
horrible thing of like
Google Nest displays.
I liked Charlie Brooker, the guy who did Black Mirror, and he said that even George Orwell didn't predict that we would buy the surveillance devices.
Yeah.
I think I have like 6 or 7 in my house. I have at least 6 or 7 in the house everywhere. I mean, in the kitchen too, with a little display, like Josh said, that screen that's always on, and it doesn't like watch you, but it does listen to you all the time. But that way, I don't need a kitchen timer anymore. Like, it's like, hey, Google, set a timer for 15 minutes. I mean, this is so much easier. I'm not going back there. I'm not going to use light switches. I'm not going to look up the weather in the newspaper. No, I just ask, what's the temperature outside? Do I need an umbrella outside? I mean, surveillance technology or convenience, I think it's a balance. And in this case, I'm going for like convenience.
But the problem is the convenience. It just slowly seeps in, and then you let in complete surveillance. Because
I dived in.
For the first time, I did that login with Google thing. Like, it finally got me after years and years and years of it saying, "Do you want to log in with Google?"
Yeah, click here.
Eventually, I was just like, it's so easy.
Yeah, I do that all the time.
I know that from now on, I'm going to be logging in with Google with everything. And they've broken that barrier. They've chipped away at me.
It's a slippery slope, isn't it? To like the South Park episode where they're surveilling people on the toilet. And they're like, then the cops come in through the window and they're like, "Sir, I need to check your asshole, sir. I need to check your asshole."
Well, this is some of the best data that they get is things like your sleeping data. They can tell based on your breathing when you're sleeping. They get what TV shows you're watching, what music you're listening to, because they can hear it. And like Martine was saying, it's very hard for them to deliver the right experience that we all want. On Star Trek, the computer must have been listening at all times. And sometimes they say computer, and sometimes they say just commands that the computer will get. Like Picard just walks over there, pushes a button, and he's like, Earl Grey, hot. Right. So at any time you're talking about tea and it'll make you tea randomly. Like, it's so hard for that computer to really figure out what you're doing and saying, unless it knows, and not just knows, but understands, like breaks down all the grammar. But there's a very talking about tea, that you want tea. Like, and again, that's the service that the consumer wants. But to do that, the computer has to really know everything. He has to know that you're doing it, but people want it.
Yeah, but there's a very big difference between my computer or my phone calculating what it thinks I need locally than sending everything to the cloud and them computing it, then keeping it forever, them using that data, them selling that data on, them analyzing everything that you do and the way that you fart. Like, and that's the key for me, is that I really want to see a personal assistant app that I can use, but it's all local. It's all local. And yes, it's got access to the internet. It can find data on the internet, but it's actually processing. And our phones are good enough to have it local. I'm pretty sure it's good enough to have it local.
Josh, I was quite amazed. I looked at the data traffic coming from those smart speakers. And especially the upload traffic, because that's the stuff it's listening. I was amazed with the amount of data that's actually being sent to Google servers, because I thought it would only start sending data whenever I would say the hot word, but it seems like they're just sending data all the time. It's
interesting.
Yeah.
Glad to see Josh come out as a pro Apple supporter here, because Apple is trying to do that to keep your data on your phone, on your computer, analyze it locally. But on the other side here, we have to go back to the Matrix, right? And that the computers are just trying to make the humans happy. So they made a perfect world where everything was taken care of, but the humans still weren't happy. So since then, they've just been trying to figure out what makes human tick, what you guys really want. And you won't tell them. So they can't figure it out. So the machines can't make the right environment for you. And we're just at this detente. And now they're spying on us everywhere, and they still don't know what we want. And they still don't know what makes us happy. Maybe we don't know. All right, now we're getting deep. Let's move on to the next issue, issue 5. The Incarcerated Silk Road's founders NFT collection and the DAO trying to save him. Ross Ulbricht is serving 2 life sentences in prison after creating the Silk Road that was used to buy drugs without violence, allowing large amounts of cannabis to be traded for large amounts of money, again, without violence, breaking the state's monopoly on violence and drug dealing. Something interesting's happened lately. Ross has decided he'd like to sell some NFTs like everyone else in the world, and the FreeRossDAO has popped up claiming that they will buy these NFTs. Also, that they will unite to bring solidarity for Ross, gathering funds to buy his Genesis collection and protesting the injustices of the American prison system. They've raised almost 954 Ethereum. That's around $4 to $5 million. Josh Segala, what do you think of this new approach to free Ross Ulbricht, starting with his NFTs and ending with the very strange and perhaps Constitution-like FreeRossDAO?
Yeah, it's amazing. I really like it. I think it's another use case for this amazing technology, and the ability to crowdsource certain causes is always a fantastic way. Is always a fantastic concept. So it's really, really nice to see. I actually had a chat with Lynn, Ross's mother, recently, and she said that they'd actually gotten it all the way to Trump. And he said, "Oh yeah, I know this thing," and he wanted to sign it, and he had it on the list of pardons, Ross's names, and then they came through, and he got kicked out of office, and now Lynn has to start all again from the ground up, going all the way through all the. So it's a really, really sad story for Lynn. She's probably one of the most hardworking mothers in the world, constantly on the cause until the day she dies. To get her son some justice, someone who made some technology, and now, I mean, it's not helping stop the concept. There are literally thousands of these drug marketplaces, way worse, and way these marketplaces have no philosophical grounding like the Silk Road did at all. And so yeah, I mean, he's the one in prison teaching yoga and meditation to the to other inmates, and he's really a genuine, lovely guy. And I would like to see, with all the corruption, if anyone's really looked deeply into that, with all the massive amount of corruption in that case, it's just so important that gets cleared up, because man, there was some just sketchy stuff throughout that case, in terms of the people prosecuting him, the police that were going after him. It's an amazing story, and in fact, there's a Netflix documentary about it made by Alex Winter, and it's very cool. I think it's called The Dark Web or The Deep Web, one of those. But yeah, check it out.
Martine Wishmayer, your thoughts on the FreeRossDAO?
Yeah, I don't know Lynn or Ross. I browsed the Silk Road at the time because I was just curious. It was one of the new applications for Bitcoin, and always joked when people said, "Oh, Bitcoin is useless," and I said, "Well, I can at least use it to pay my dealer online," and they are just shocked, usually. But yeah, I don't know. I think it's a risk that comes with the territory. If you try to blatantly enable drug sales on the net, then you can expect, especially if you're the first one, then you can expect them to make some example out of you. So it's nice that he makes some NFTs, and the DAO. I don't know how they're going to process refunds, if any. Like the Constitution DAO had big problems with that, but. I hope the money is spent well, and that that he should be free, just like the Tiger King, by the way. He should be free to free Joe Exotic.
Sadly, I think this money comes far too late. It's very important to understand the concept of timing, and the time to donate this money was before the trial, when we could have hired the greatest lawyers of all time, and especially the greatest data departments of all time to handle all of the evidence that was compiled in this Ulbricht case. The team he had, the defense he had, I don't think was prepared for the data, didn't do a good job with it, didn't do a good job with the defense. It wasn't the best defense that money could buy, because we just saw that in the Kyle Rittenhouse case and in the O.J. Simpson case. And if you can push the money up over a certain level, you can overturn almost any trial. The problem is now for Ross is what Josh was referring to with the pardon process. Money doesn't help the pardon process. You can't hire better attorneys for the pardon process. He's in a situation now where they've already gone to appeal. He's already lost. It would pretty much take the Supreme Court or a pardon. And both of those are very difficult. Maybe they could use the money to finance Kim Kardashian to work on this. She used to be in the pardons thing. It's too bad they couldn't have gotten the money to Trump directly. If only they perhaps could have stayed in the Trump International Hotel. There could have been some kind of a briefcase situation. But yeah, that really seemed like that was a big opportunity, because you have to say, like, is there any other president that's crazy enough to pardon this guy who sold a lot of drugs on the internet, even though he's a good dude and he had a nice website? I think we've got another 20 years, 30 years, if the country survives, of presidents, of liberalization of drug laws, before everyone says, yeah, that guy who sold, he should be out. But we haven't even let the normal dealers out. There's states where they have legalized marijuana, yet people are in jail for dealing marijuana. And that's just at the drug level, not even at the making a giant website serving the whole country level. Go ahead,
In
Josh.
Germany, they arrested the biggest dealer on Silk Road, like by far.
Shiny Flakes. What's it?
I've forgotten his name, but he got like a year in prison or something.
Yeah, and then he started selling again once he was out.
That's amazing. That is, by the way, that is one fantastic documentary. And that young kid, and at the end of the documentary, they're like, what do you do now? And he's like, I am working in a car park. And everyone's laughing, like, ha ha ha, he's working in a car park. And it's just openly like a huge, massive drug dealer, but he's done it in such a way that they can't touch him.
There is 2 documentaries about it. One documentary, Shiny Flakes, on Netflix, which I really recommend watching. And there is also a comedy series based on this story, and it's called How to Sell Drugs Online Fast.
And they talk about funny. Bitcoin in a very good way on that.
Oh yes, they have the wallets,
and the screenwriter for that. And he asked me a few questions. I had lunch before they wrote.
Oh wow!
Wrote
so some of the intel which is in the TV show is from you. Nice. It's very good. The Bitcoin explanation is very good.
Nice.
Also, it's interesting to see the new German government is claiming one of their priorities is to decriminalize marijuana. So more and more,
actually to legalize it.
To legalize, even better.
Yeah.
The things that this website, was pilloried for, that was attacked for, are now becoming legal everywhere, are becoming large corporations. Again, maybe a good use of these funds, or a good use of the Free Ross people's time, would be to petition these large cannabis companies and say, hey, you owe a little to this. It's already too late to petition the large Bitcoin companies. They've already started ignoring you. but maybe these cannabis companies have a little bit more of a political aspect in them, unlike Brian Armstrong, who bans all politics from his company. He's obviously not going to help you, and so many other Bitcoiners. But again, the timing on this is wrong. The big Bitcoiners, like what's his name, Roger Ver, all these kind of people, they all believe in freedom, but they believe in freedom for themselves. They didn't step up to defend Ross. Ben, Ark, your thoughts on the
Wait a minute, that's not true, man. That's not true.
They didn't, man. Their money wasn't there.
Roger Ver gave millions to that case over the time period. He's donated a lot of money to Lynn to help Ross, for sure.
Well, good for Roger. It's maybe
I'm just saying, you shouldn't.
Well, maybe it's the other ones, but again, the defense wasn't there. The dream team wasn't there. I didn't get that feeling. I've watched parts of the defense. I've read about it. I don't think that they were equally armed.
I think one of the I didn't know that. I didn't know that about Roger, but that's a good correction, like redaction. Yeah. Well done, Roger. Come back to Bitcoin, Roger. Twat.
Yeah, thumbs up for Roger.
Come back. Come on. We'll have you back.
We'll even buy him a cup of coffee on the Lightning Network.
And a spliff.
Ben, Ark, your thoughts on the FreeRossDAO and the NFTs?
I mean, it's very cool, and he's making some money for his mom and for some of his loved ones from prison. But I mean, I think the Free Ross campaign, I think it's a lost cause. There's so many more people who are eligible and should be pardoned before you get to Ross. And he did a lot for Bitcoin, absolutely. But then he did do also some shady shit, which he wasn't really charged for, but in the public opinion, in the public court of the stuff he did with Critical Pain, the administrator trying to get him snuffed, that was shady. And that just, I wish he hadn't have done that, because his plight would have been easier. Now
we don't know if he did that, and one of the things,
there's lots of logs like which are fairly substantial to prove that he did try and get rid of this guy, and Critical Pain was one of the main administrators too. It was pretty dark, even though he didn't. It was all a frame, a setup, and I suppose there's a very good argument there, because like you when you have what's that called when you have like when someone's framed, when they're
entrapment.
So there's a good entrapment case to be had there, because the whole thing was fictional. Like the person who was offering to offer their assassin services to kill Critical Pain. Like, I don't think you could do that like in a UK court, for example. That wouldn't fly. It would just be discarded. But in America, you seem to get away with those kind of.
Oh, you got away with it in the UK too. The whole reason we all have to show, have you got 100 milliliters of liquid, is because there was 4 rat bag fools that the MI5 had actually gone and infiltrated, was teaching them how to make bombs.
Oh, okay.
And then they swooped in and go, aha, you guys were going to make bombs out of liquid, arrest them. Turns out none of them even had passports to even get on a plane. But now the whole world has to throw away shitloads of toothpaste.
Again, you are the oracle of truth. Like I stand corrected. I mean, yeah. Okay, so entrapment happens everywhere, but sadly there is that tarnish on Ross Ulbricht's record. So he's not going to be freed anytime soon. But it's very cool that he's using his technology to make some money for his mum, who absolutely, like Josh said, is the mum who everyone wants. Like, she's very passionate, and if there is anyone who would get their son out of jail, then it's Ross Ulbricht's mum.
I think the real problem with the Ross Ulbricht story is that he didn't have an exit plan. He didn't have an exit strategy. If he had gone into the Silk Road saying that, well, as a Bitcoiner, I need to prove that there can be this market.
Yeah, but he was ideological. Like, he was building.
He didn't have a number where he was like, if I could sell $100 worth, I would then exit and prove myself as this is done. On the other side, he also wasn't committed to being a cartel person. As a cartel person, he could say, I'm going to raise $10 million. I'm going to raise $100 million or whatever it was. Either one of these would have been an exit strategy where you could say, okay, I crossed the finish line. I proved you can sell drugs on the internet, or I proved that I could make $100 million or whatever he was looking for. He could have finished line. He could have exited. He could have gotten out. The problem is he stays in too long. He's dealing with customer service issues. He's dealing with employees, and he gets so mad at an employee, he decides to kill him. Like, we've all been there. You're working at a fast food place and they won't flip the burgers right. And you're like, kill that man. But Ross was doing it with his whole, ghetto.
Hang on, guys. Like, I think it's pretty unfair. These logs, this is typical of media, and I don't want to be part of it because we're just saying that he did this. We don't know if those logs are real or anything. It was never brought to trial. It was never put in front of a court of law. The whole case is so corrupt. They could have made, like, they were obsessed with getting this guy. Chuck Schumer was obsessed with getting the guy. There was plenty of money and plenty of freaks making money, stealing Bitcoin. And this is police.
Yeah, how many of the FBI agents actually got indicted themselves for stealing the Bitcoin?
Like two or three FBI agents actually went to prison because they were so corrupt. So
yeah, you're right.
So, like, those logs, we don't know anything about them, and just to say that that's truth and because we saw it in a movie, it's not. It didn't go in front of a court, and it's unfair for us to constantly propagate that stuff, which might be true, might not be. I'm not the one to say, but all I know is from everything that I had always read of the Dread Pirate Roberts, and by the way, the Dread Pirate Roberts was kind of an exit plan for it, because in the movie, the Princess Bride, the Dread Pirate Roberts will always be there because the moniker gets passed on in generations. And this was the idea, that he would build this thing and walk away. And that was his defense, is that I built this and sold it. And there was many Dread Pirate Roberts.
And didn't the Dread Pirate Roberts continue to post after he was arrested as well? That was
there was plenty of weird stuff, because there was Dread Pirates. Yeah, exactly.
I think we're all Dread Pirate Roberts, except Greg Wright. He's a fraud.
But I do think that Ross had to have a better plan. There's been other people who have broken through and been the first at something, and we all know what happens, right? They get nailed to a rock, and that bird comes back every day and eats out their liver. Ross knew about that. He knew about Satoshi. He knew about the way that he launched Bitcoin. And Satoshi launched Bitcoin above everything else. He's disappeared. We don't know anything about him. He's been an incredible success in that way. Where was Ross's similar plan? He should have known how he would be judged, how he'd be judged ideologically, and that his defense would be tied up in that pure ideological thing. So if he had maybe not spent any of the money, if he'd put it all in one big pile, and if he'd not ever thought about, putting messages out, or not, someone put these out or something, there's these messages and all this stuff, it destroys his whole case. His whole ideology pulls away, and they're allowed to paint him with that other brush. It just seems like something that you'd know. Like, if you knew you were going to, because this is such a threshold to go into this, like, not just that you want to buy some drugs online with Bitcoin personally, or that you think it would be fun, but you think that everyone else should do it, and you should be the one to create a forum where this could then happen. Like, I just think that it wasn't serious enough or something. I don't know. There wasn't a plan there.
I mean, the guy even banned guns on the Silk Road, because the philosophy was don't do harm, and you don't aggress, the non-aggression principle of the anarcho-capitalist system. That's the foundational principle, and that's why they don't believe in government and all this stuff, because they are an aggressor. They use force and have a monopoly on force. So this was a pinnacle of his philosophical grounding. And then to have all these logs, and this is why I still don't buy the whole thing. But what happened with that murder for trial, he actually had a massive following, because his philosophical writings were amazing. And he would put out these great blog posts, philosophical blog posts. So a lot of people like, man, Dread Pirate Roberts, he's an absolute amazing, lovely, and caring person, against force, against violence. And then he banned guns on the site for sale. And then when they arrested him, they said murder for hire and blah, 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 which, by the way, when it went to court, they dropped all of that. But in between that happening and that going to court, public opinion, and everybody walked away. Everyone, all the people that loved the guy, walked away from him and turned their back. And that goes to what you were saying, Matt, is that when where were all these people? Why couldn't they get the best lawyers? Well, because everyone turned their back, and it still happens now. You post anything on Reddit about the case, yeah, he was a murderer. And it's like, you know, and this is what's really unfortunate about the case, is that story, I feel, could have been planted there to really make sure that his following turns their back on him totally.
I also think they made a mistake in how they went about defending him. It was kind of like you're saying, Josh, he was this superhero, Dread Pirate Roberts, but as soon as he got caught, he became this Eagle Scout that, you know, his mother was trying to protect. And that motherly Eagle Scout defense didn't work. And I'm not saying that being the ideological Dread Pirate Roberts would have worked either, but it would have set him up to write a series of books and to have been a political figure in prison. Unfortunately, the person we've heard from in prison has been this Eagle Scout who screwed up and wants to support his mother. And it's a bummer that, you know, he let his mother down and that he did these strange criminal things and all this stuff with running the website, which was a criminal act. I'm sorry. It was political, but it was also criminal. And that he lost all of this political momentum. Like, I want to read the book of this Dread Pirate Roberts who, like you say there, Josh, that's excellent evidence for him. He didn't sell guns. He clearly could have sold guns and gotten more money. If it was about being a cartel person and having lots of money, he could have gotten there faster. So-and-so, if he'd sold guns, if he'd sold nuclear bombs, whatever other bad thing you can think of to sell on a website, he could have opened it up. But like you say, Josh, he restricted it. He made all these ideological decisions, but when it was time to defend him, the ideology disappeared. And then personally, I've heard that the judge was upset that the people outside, and they're probably pretty hardcore libertarians, were pushing jury nullification as an idea. And I agree with this idea, especially in this case. If you think that the law is unjust, you can tell the jury they don't have to rule on an unjust law. And as we've seen in the United States and maybe even in Germany, marijuana prohibition is going down as an unjust law. 70 to 80% of the populace anywhere in the country, practically anywhere in the world, would say that's unjust and shouldn't be prosecuted. This was a good attempt for them, but the judge was so angry, he threatened Lynn and told her that they would sequester the jury and the jury would hate them. But again, sequestration is pretty much necessary in such a large case. The fact that they didn't do it is probably suspect in the trial as well. And according to people I've talked to, she told the protesters to go away. So they severed this connection between the ideological Dread Pirate Roberts, who we all liked, and who I think is a fundraising, you know, genius, a luminary, someone that could raise these funds, to this unfortunate Eagle Scout that let his mom down. And I think that this is a bad choice. Let's see, Ben, Dan, any more to say on this? I'm not sure if we got to you. Dan, go ahead.
Well, I think I've seen a lot of programs, you know, in the COVID lockdown times about confession tapes and, you know, like the electric shock experiment, right? You know, that one where the idea of like persuasion gets people to do messed up stuff. And, you know, you'd even look at Darren Brown and his funny experiments and how he convinces people to do weird stuff just by plowing an idea continuously. And if you put someone in a situation where you are entrapping them, you know, that's that you can agree to all sorts. In terms of the fact that he had a site where you could buy drugs, like what a crazy world like that we live in, where in one country you can get executed for smoking weed, and in another there's an industry for it. And what that says about the difference in opinions that we have about how innocuous something can actually be versus how harmful it can be. But I remember going on Silk Road, and you know, because you had a look, and there were instructions, right, on how to do stuff and how to do it safely. Now, when I went and got things from people, there were no instructions. It was crap quality, and no one was really out for your safety. They just want to sell you stuff. Like, you know, you didn't get an instruction book saying like, here's how to do it safely. Here's how to, you know, if something goes wrong, blah, blah, blah. And so, you know, for someone to go to jail who basically set up a site that had, you know, obviously there was some other stuff on that they sold, like was there credit cards and stuff, like, or was that part of the
raw milk?
But, you know, ultimately it's just a very sad thing that someone's gone to jail for like 40 years and has done no direct harm to anyone, right? And and the dealers probably that got caught would have done less time than that. It's just, I think, if, you can't deny that he did something that was illegal, but whether that's because of the fact that we've got outdated laws which we're slowly turning around, like you look at Portugal, and is it New York as well? Did I see New York? They're providing centers where people can actually go and do drugs safely now. With the public opinion's changing, and it's becoming what it should be, which is a health issue rather than some sort of crazy criminal issue. And so hopefully hearts and minds change over time. But I think 40 years is just insane, and it's very sad to see someone lose their life for having a website that literally did no direct harm.
Sadly, it'll be longer than that. It's triple life or something. It's crazy.
It was triple life.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
Especially if you compare it to other tech founders who also moved fast and broke things. If you look at Facebook, he downloaded all those pictures from Harvard, illegally started a Facebook. If you look at Google, they downloaded the entire internet and then they indexed it. That sounds illegal. If you look at Apple, they were selling blue boxes, just what Jobs and Woz, that allowed you to make phone calls for free. All of these we laugh off now. We're like, oh yes, it was fun when they just went ahead and did whatever they wanted with the entire internet and built Google, and everyone's like, that's fine. And then they keep doing it, and then Facebook does it. All these other companies break the rules, but this guy, his website, that's a jail website.
Yeah, well, the interesting thing was, Dan, you could trying to go to the dealer on the road and give him negative feedback for his quality of his content would probably get you a bullet. Whereas on the Silk Road, what the interesting thing was there, that people could actually write reviews. And because back then you had to fire up Bitcoin QT, you had to command line, you had to be pretty nerdy to understand Bitcoin back in the day, right? I think we can all agree. And so the customers on Silk Road were very, very, they were university students, they were very educated, and they would take the product that they would buy on the Silk Road, analyze it in some of these spectrometers and all this equipment that they had access to at universities, and then give really harsh feedback. So the product actually became really, really good on there, really clean and safer, and people would give feedback to the drug dealers. Then the dealers would get very, very professional, have like help centers and support tickets, and one of the
you could almost substitute this for Amazon Marketplace or for eBay or PayPal or any of these other services where it started off kind of amateur and not professional. So but pretty soon you're selling 10 Barbie dolls a week. You're a pro.
One of the first places I heard about Bitcoin was I used to teach like little bastards, like the rough kids, really rough kids, youth offending. I mean, all from horrible backgrounds, and I loved them. They were great, and they were really the sorts of people you want engaged in society. And one of the first things I heard about, first times I heard about Bitcoin was chatting to them when they were actively like on things like on Silk Road. And I remember taking a look at Silk Road then, thinking, oh, fuck, because obviously with my kids, like I wanted to kind of keep them away from drugs, not particularly good for those sorts of young people. And it's still something which I'm concerned about, like ready access to narcotics. I'm not sure if it's particularly good for some people in society. Anyway, something I really liked was the forums. Because in the forums, you would have all this really good advice about if you're going to take this drug, then do this, do that, and make sure you've got a friend with you, blah blah blah. Make sure you're hydrated. And there was I was like, well, okay, if they're going to do this thing, then it's good. It's better that they're doing it here than they're going and buying it from some smackhead on the street who just wants to get them hooked on something stronger. Yeah, it was one of my first experiences with Bitcoin was via the kids I was teaching through Silk Road.
Yeah, I mean, you could argue that people are going to take. It's like the prohibition never worked because people were drunk anyway. People are always going to take drugs. So what Silk Road did was allow a marketplace with feedback to make the drugs that people were going to take anyway cleaner and safer. So if anything, it was a good thing for the health of people taking drugs, rather than just getting it off the street, not knowing what they're doing, and then ending up smashed and like jumping out of windows and all sorts of crazy stuff because they couldn't
and there was
figure out how to come down.
That's the user side to it. But there was also another side of like really poor communities that were poppy farmers, or they were farmers. And there was one of the drug dealers on there. I remember reading this article about how he went to find these farmers who didn't have plumbing, didn't have anything in the community. It was really ragtag and awful. And he said, look, I need to buy product off you. And he ended up bringing back so much wealth and building plumbing and building infrastructure for this entire space, and all through the back of the Silk Road, which was also an interesting side effect on that side. I'm definitely not for, people taking drugs and just like that. But what fascinated me was how the market, the free market, and the ideas of people only harming themselves, which obviously drugs, it isn't like that. It's not a panacea. When you have a drug addict in the house, you're also hurting and harming other people that are around these people, for sure. But it's definitely an interesting philosophy, and it's not black and white and
this is one of my biggest problems with full legalization of drugs. Is like often, like if you have full legalization of drugs in the US, for example, a lot of poorer communities which didn't have access to different industries, like the range of industries which other groups have access to, they had access to this particular industry, and as a way for them to bring money into their community, and they would use it to try and it would filter down into their community. And I think when you fully legalize drugs, it kind of is, when it gets taken over by the corporations, it can kind of be pushed in a way which I don't really agree with. But no, that as a side effect of like a gray market, for example, one of my favorite examples of sort of is in Denmark, in Copenhagen, the town of Christiania, which is, so Copenhagen's like this really hip, cool city full of very healthy, happy people. And in the middle of it, there's this little town called Christiania. And if you want to go do drugs and stuff, you can go to Christiania and the police won't bother you. You can do whatever you want. It's fine. As long as you don't make a fuss. If you make a fuss, then the local drug dealers will take care of that, because they don't want the police to come into Christiania and ruin their gig. And I prefer that system to like a full legalized system, because I don't know if with a full legalized system, when you get the corporations get involved, like you have in San Francisco in America, and then it kind of feels a bit pusher, like they're kind of pushing it. And partly, one of the reasons I prefer that system is because you do have money then filtering into these like poorer economies in society.
I'm not so sure about Christiania. I've heard that mostly it's mobbed up now. And so a similar things happen to the posh community, where one large company dominates things. And in the other system, one large mafia dominates things. You're probably better off with the company. At least you can regulate them. Like Dan was saying, you could test the drugs. All those kind of things are at least above board, because they may be in a legalopoly, but at least they're following most of the rules.
You could do that in Christiania. You can get drug testing kits, and there's drug testers there. And then also, like, it's so safe in Christiania. They have like tours. You can take your family. I took my kids, and you go through Christiania. And I took my boy, who was about 10 at the time. And I'm like, okay, this is what happens if you get rid of all the rules. Does this look good to you? Is this what you want in society? Because if you don't, then you can step over here, and this is what you have when you have some rules and some structure. I
think it's safe.
It's very safe.
Before you start giving out those 2-star reviews and saying how bad the product is and so forth, I think that would be a big problem. You'd also have a hard time processing refunds. But I'm told that we're running out of time. We have to jump to predictions and then story of the week. Tell us in the chat, do you have anything you'd like to hear us predict? Do you have anything that you'd like to predict in the chat? I'm looking at the chat right now so I can read that out loud. That you can put your predictions on the record for history. The chat will last forever, or at least as long as YouTube. And now, are you ready, Martine, with a prediction?
I predict the price of Bitcoin will be higher next week, but my story of the week is more interesting, I think.
Martine picks the price one. Josh Segala, prediction.
Story of the week was there's just prediction.
We'll do the story of the week after this. You have to go like,
okay, wow.
Just
Well,
predict something like Superman will accept Bitcoin.
Yeah, I predict that next week the Bitcoin group will be on the air on Friday.
Well, that's a tough one. We might have to do a different day. Dan Eve, prediction.
I predict that Charlie Munger is going to go all in on a shitcoin and lose his private keys, hopefully.
Ooh, crushing. Ben Ark, prediction.
Fuck, I haven't got one, sorry. Yeah, the Bitcoin group will be next Friday.
Oh, a lot riding on that. We might have to do it Thursday and Saturday. I don't know. Martine, okay, go ahead with a story of the week.
It was just in. We talked about the Silk Road, but I just read the U.S. seized a record $1 billion of Bitcoin in November, and apparently they found they did some research on the traffic going in and out from Bitcoin on the Silk Road at the time, and they caught a lot of coins back in 2014 and they auctioned them off. But what they did, Chain Analysts, they found another amount of transactions worth about $1 billion in November when they seized it, and which is worth now $3 billion. So that's a lot of money, extra money, and it's a lot of extra money compared to the 2014 auction. So I suspect these Bitcoin will be hitting the market, and that might be one of the reasons that the price is down. So until that clears up, there's a lot of Bitcoins to be absorbed and bought. So I think Michael Saylor will probably buy them all, but it's quite interesting to see that Chain Analysis found that there were like what was it, 54 undetected Bitcoin transactions that were executed by the Silk Road, according to the IRS and Chain Analysis, totaling about $1 billion. And it turned out to be somebody that actually hacked the Silk Road at the time and stole those coins. So those coins have been located. The Bitcoins have been seized in November and it's just out in the news. So I think this will certainly impact the price for a while. But, you know, for all the viewers out there, they know that there will never be more than 21 million Bitcoins. So when these Bitcoins are all sold and finished and hodled in some safe storage somewhere, price will go up again.
You stole those coins before I had a chance to tax them. Josh Segala, story of the week.
Well, we just gave away a MacBook Pro Max on the standard.io for the waiting list competition. It's been really, really good, actually, having a competition where people, they sign up to the waiting list and then they get 5 points for that, 5 entries, and then they tweet about it, and then we've got like 7,000 something or 71,000 entries now or something like that. People are going bonkers, all signing up and tweeting and sharing and following, and you get tickets. Anyway, next week we're giving away 1 million TST, which is our governance token. So, and it's split up. That we already started doing DAO stuff, so we start to put votes out to the community. Should we give it all to one person or split it up into 10 lots? And so the community voted, which is really cool. And so we're going to do 10 lots out. And so that's the next week's prize.
Check it out at thestandard.io. Dan Eve, story of the week.
So last week, if you tuned in, I was stuck. I was in lockdown because I was waiting for a COVID test, and there was CoinFest on, and Ben was at CoinFest, and he was dancing with Theo, and I was really jealous and really upset and really down. Obviously, it wasn't it couldn't be helped. But about 4:30 on Saturday, my COVID test got sent through just when I just had a strop, and I was like going upstairs, like I've got nothing to do. It's a Friday night, and I was meant to be going to CoinFest. And anyway, so I got my COVID test, and I drove to Manchester, and then got there about an hour before I was meant to have a little sing song, and I managed to do it, albeit after about I don't know, half an hour of like tech problems of all things. Like we couldn't get the HDMI connector working, and then the sound wasn't working properly, and then I was just like, screw it. So I had a few beers and cracked on, and really enjoyed myself.
Man. Do it live.
Oh yeah, it was definitely live. That was for sure. And went out on the tiles with Ben, and had probably one of the best burgers at about 5 a.m. It was brilliant, wasn't it? We had burgers, and we got like a chicken feast and shit. Just around the corner in the Rainbow District. Great food there, amazing. And it was nice. Met some people in the park, had a chat, and eventually kipped on the floor of what they call the train spotters of crypto, or train spotters of Bitcoin. So it was a great night.
I'm glad you got to go, Dan. Bully for you, and bully for CoinFest. Great conference in Manchester. Shout out to CoinFest. Wish we all could have been there.
Yeah.
Ben Ark, story of the week.
I think that's the last CoinFest as well. I mean, I think the people who organize CoinFest are going to organize something else, but they did say on the chat that I think that's the last official quote unquote CoinFest. But yeah, that was a great night, and we went into the burger
name to shit CoinFest.
Well, I think that's part of the problem, is maybe they're going to try and ditch some of that stuff. But yeah, it was an incredible conference, and thank you so much for everyone who organized that, and anyone who organizes a conference, because it's an incredible ball ache which everyone else then benefits from when we just go there and just enjoy it. And when we went into that burger bar, Dan said to me, "Oh, do you want to get anything in the bar for any food?" And I was like, no, I just need beer. And then as soon as I said that, I was like, oh man, it's 5 a.m. I've drank 5,000 beers, and I need food. And then Dan came up with this platter. He bought everything in the burger bar, and then we went into this park, and honestly, it really was the best burger which I've ever had. It was 5 a.m. in a park in Manchester. But yeah, conferences, go to Bitcoin conferences, support your local Bitcoin conference. It's very good. So story of the week is the PRs in LM Bits are just getting really legit. We've got some great contributors, and which I'm very, very grateful for. And the project's really coming along. And then you look through some of the more recent PRs, and there's nice discussion going on in the on the PR, and it's just great. It's great to see the project kind of evolving. We've also been discussing in the LM Bits chat the idea of having a hack day maybe in Lisbon in Portugal in late January. So hopefully hiring the Block Cafe in Lisbon, which is like a Bitcoin cafe, which looks pretty cool, and it's got a nice sort of venue size, maybe could accommodate about 50 people. We were going to do it in Berlin, but because of the Corona stuff, like we probably won't do it in Berlin. So actually Jeff Fulmo from Berlin, who organizes the Lightning conferences, he suggested Lisbon as a potential place to go, and super excited about that. So if anyone wants to find out more about that, then look out for tweets and whatnot, because we'll be figuring out when it's going to happen exactly on dates, and everything else. Also, I just did a video before this, before the Bitcoin group. I did a video with Fiat Jeff, and we were explaining our new implementation of LM Bits, which is written in Go, and it's called LM Bits Infinity, and it's really quite exciting because you can it's just very exciting. You can the extensions which you make in LM Bits, it would probably take me back a day or two to make an extension, whereas with the new Infinity version, because we use these Lua config files, it takes like 20 minutes, half an hour to rapid prototype an extension. It builds everything. It's very fancy. So we've been so I'm looking forward to kind of getting my hands dirty with that, and then hopefully by the time we get to January, then when we do our hack day, we'll have a workshop, so people who come along, they can learn about how to rapid prototype an extension LM Bits, and it only takes them like half an hour or so to do. So it's very exciting to see that project. Like,
oh my god, can someone please at this hackathon make a Lightning Gmail extension so that people have to attach some sats to an email? It'll come to one folder called important, and then everything else goes to sort of unimportant. And because sometimes I sign up to some, site and they'll send me a verification. I still want that, but I just want to see the sats, and I want to see the emails that people have actually paid to talk to me. Where it doesn't need to be much. And a great setting would be to send it to charity, direct to charity or something like that.
What's super cool about that is that's the original use case for proof of work, isn't it?
Right.
Adding back with remailers, Hashcash.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I missed a really important email the other day because I get so much ham. So ham is not spam. It's stuff that you actually sign up for, but it's just a bunch of crap that you never want to open. And you just miss stuff. And not only that, there's all these bots like pretending to know me and they're really convincing. And then you're like, do I really know this person? It's horrible. So I think email needs Lightning Network right now, and LNbits is the way to do it.
Very cool. Check out lnbits.org, I think.
.com. We haven't got a dog. Oh, we have got a dog, but yeah, you can check it out if you want, but lnbits.com is the way to go.
lnbits.com. Now we have a prediction from the chat. Stefan asks, predict when is Bitcoin going to be distributed evenly? I think it's going to be very hard. I think it was a fair distribution at the beginning. Not a lot of us got into that early distribution though, so that's a bummer. Maybe after 50 years, 100 years, once people sadly start dropping off, then maybe their descendants don't value the Bitcoin as much. They'll sell it. Maybe that will get you more of an even distribution. Let's open it up to the panel. Anyone want to answer on
in the UK? We have all these stately homes which are owned by super rich sort of feudal families back in the day, and now all they've really got is the building, like the home and the grounds, which they then rent out to the National Trust. It becomes like a theme park. You can go walk around and you can look at the fancy paintings and so on. I think that's kind of the same with Bitcoin. Like, some people made a load of money to begin with, but you burn through capital. Like, you buy stuff, you buy fancy cars, you invest in the wrong things. You have a wayward child who takes too much cocaine, gambles too much, and then the money just goes. And I think that's what happens with Bitcoin. So no, ultimately, I think it will become, and it is over time becoming more evenly distributed. You can see that in the addresses. And yeah, so I don't think it's something to worry about. I think it is becoming more evenly distributed over time.
I think it's, if it would be evenly distributed, we would call it communism, right? And this is not working. So I think it's fairly evenly distributed already.
Crazy wealth disparity is a product of the ability to have control over the money printer, isn't it? Which you can't do in Bitcoin.
As William Gibson said, the future's here. It's just not evenly distributed yet. We also have a prediction by Christian, who says he predicts the Bitcoin or BitConnect bottom at 34K or 44K. So it could be a big drop. Chester Copperpot predicts that Bitcoin will go sideways until next year because people love paying taxes so much they will literally sell their Bitcoin. So maybe the tax event will be a larger event than the Christmas event and all of the people buying stuff. I want to add in a prediction on the Ross Ulbricht DAO. As much as I root for Ross and his cause, I'm afraid that this money will not be spent properly. And is it too soon to predict that it will all be stolen or used improperly? Is that too soon? Well, we're running out of time, so it's going to have to be too soon. So we'll see you guys all again, hopefully next week on Friday, as it's been much predicted here. However, if I am traveling on Friday, we might have to do it on Thursday or Saturday. Just working that out because
another prediction we failed at.
Yeah.
Even the simplest predictions can be so hard to predict. You should have used your triangles and your squares and all your square rules and those tools. The numbers, the facts. Facts are simple and facts are late. Facts are lazy and facts are late. Facts all come with points of view. Facts don't do what I want them to. But we're running out of time.